Brian, long time no see.
I know. You're well?
How are you? Yeah, good.
Yeah, I'm saying good. Yeah.
Limping to the end of term.
Bit like that, yeah.
I know.
Sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Morning, Jonathan. Morning, Piers.
Good morning.
And welcome, Emma.
Hi, Brian.
Good morning, everybody. Just to let you know that we're going live now, so we're just about to start the meeting. Just gonna change the slide here. We have now gone live. So, Brian, if I pass it over to you.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. Welcome along. First, I just want to welcome Emma, who is taking on this role, and I'm sure Emma will be contributing at some point during the meeting. So, welcome along, Emma. Also, just apologies, Paul Miller is unable to attend today, but also just to let you know that Paul is resigning as chair, so he's not here, so I've got some big shoes to try and fill this morning. But I just wanted to take the moment just before we get started, just to thank Paul, because I think most of us will agree that he's been a phenomenal chair over this time. His contribution to the school forum over the years has just been immense with what he's done. Since taking on the role of chair, he's ensured that we've had that rigour and effectiveness in our meetings, to provide that appropriate support and challenge when it's needed to be. He's worked really well in partnership, I feel, with the authority and with the finance team to enable a more collaborative approach. It was a bit of a more of a them versus us back in the day. Which has resulted in a more transparent approach from the finance team. The reports are now being of much higher quality. I think a lot of that's, we've got to thank Paul for that, initiating a lot of that work. His leaving certainly the school forum in a much stronger position than when he started as a chair. His expertise will be sorely missed. I've learned a lot from Paul and have thoroughly enjoyed working with him as a vice chair over the past 5 or 6 years, and we'd like to thank him greatly for all his hard work and contribution and efforts as a chair, and we wish him all the best for the future. So I don't know if anyone wants to add anything else, but I just wanted to make sure that we did note all Paul's work that he's done over the years. Is there any other apologies, Luciana?
No.
Right. Okay, thank you. Right, so we get started. We'll look at the minutes from the previous meeting. So we're just looking for anything that is on accuracy and just on date or anything else. So if you start with page 7, I'm just waiting, hands up. Ian Morgan. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, just it's to do with the minutes, but prior to that, I don't appear in the attendance, but I'm certainly in the minutes, so I was there.
Lovely, thank you. Noted.
Thanks.
Thank you. So page 7, nothing else. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. From that page 10, there was a couple of things actually resolved. I know we've got a detailed report being submitted, which we'll be looking at later from part of that. Anything from page 11, page 12, no, page 13. Lovely, right. And then there are some actions there that followed, and I do believe that most of the information that is needed for Barksport is included in today's meeting. That's correct. Lovely. Okay, right. If we move on then, any declarations of interests? No. Okay. So I'm not sure if I'm handing over to Emma or to Catherine on this one first, but the revenue outturn report.
It's me. Yeah, you're going to get very sick of my voice today. I'll be doing most of them. Okay, right. Okay, so the outturn report, as you can see from the report, we had an overspend of 7.2 million, which was, when we set the budget, it was 3.9, and the previous forecast that we brought to you in March said 6.8. So it's went up a little bit, the outturn, but with the brought forward of 10 million. And then we also received 8 million from the safety valve programme. We've actually got a cumulative deficit at the end of 22-23 of 9.2 million. And also I've just done the report as well about the maintained school balances. They've increased from last year, but that's in a separate report later on. The main reasons for the increases are in the, I'm not sharing, am I? I'm very sorry. I thought I was sharing. There we go. So this just shows the balances, how they've changed and for each school, each type of school. But the changes in the forecast to the actual outturn was a slight increase in the growth fund. The high needs block, that obviously went up. We had top ups in mainstream schools were higher, and we also had a reduction in the independent non-maintained special schools, which I think is a good news story for a change. It actually went down, and that's because we had some split funding contributions that were agreed later on in the year. So we had some social care contributions that came in late towards some of the costs there, so that helped. And then we've had a big increase in the EOTAS costs, and we found those very hard to predict, but it's one of the programs, the work streams in the safety valve program, so that's something that we're working on and looking to identify those costs much sooner and keep a handle on those so we know what's going on there. For the early years block, we had an underspend of 50,000. Again, we're waiting for the it should be any day now in July that they tell us what our actual final allocation is for the previous year. And we've kept 50k back because that is for the hardship fund that we talked about last time. So we've kept that in reserves for 23-24. And then this is just the reports. I don't know if anyone's got any questions about the outturn at all. No.
Doesn't look like it at the stage.
No.
No.
Okay, fine. So that's it then. Oh, Karina.
Sorry, thanks, Catherine. Forgive my ignorance. EOTAS, does that include alternative provision?
It's in that line. So we have alternative provision that's attached to mainstream schools in the mainstream line. So that was part of the increase there. So where children have been said they need to go to a special school, but actually they're staying in mainstream and they need alternative provision, that's in that line there. But the EOTAS and alternative provision for those that aren't in a school is in the other line.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Catherine.
I think that's that then.
Okay, thank you. So now the questions here, Catherine. Have we moved to, do you want to move on to the next part then, Catherine, on the maintain?
Why not? Yeah, let's do it. I was going to say, you're going to get really sick of my voice. Okay. Oh, actually, I was going to just talk about the growth fund really quickly as well. But that was just saying that's just showing the position that we were at, where we had the forecast in there, and then we actually underspent a bit. But with the overspend is in the reserves that we brought forward. So.
And we've got growth fund update coming up soon too.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so maintained school balances. Obviously, this is just maintained schools. So we don't know academies balances, what they are, but we bring this report through every year just so everyone can see what's going on. The balances have increased by £1 million from the end of last year. And as we said there's 5 schools that are now in deficit. I think there was 4 last year. 7 have balances of less than 5% of their income, but we've got 15 schools with balances above 10% of their income. So it's such a contrast between all the schools. So it's quite hard to help you all out when there's so many different varying reasons behind all the everyone's balances. But we've just got a table here showing how the balances have changed between each type of school. So you see everyone's had an increase there, and we've just got a table at the end that just shows each individual school and how whether they've gone up or down, and we've got like green and red to say whether it's good or bad, basically. So that's just to sort of highlight the variances in the school balances and what we're dealing with across the maintained schools. We haven't currently got a mechanism in the scheme for financing schools to claw back any excess balances, because it used to be we had it a few years ago, well, quite a few years ago now, that if a primary school had a balance over 8% and it had been increasing for 3 years, we would claw that back, and for secondaries it was 5%, but we haven't had that for a while, and I don't think there's really the appetite to do that, but it's something that needs to be probably still discussed with the powers that be, that maybe that's something we do bring in the future.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know if there'd been appetite for it. You're right.
No.
No. And also, I guess for the society, we can be aware of that is that a lot of these schools will be converting at some point too.
Yeah, funnily enough, it's the ones with really big balances.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
With the schools, obviously 5 in deficit, which isn't great. We've got 7 schools that are below 5% of income. do you feel schools are at risk? And if there are, is there any support that can be provided for these schools to ensure that they don't go into deficit? Is there anything that way you can do there?
Yeah, so we put the offer out at the beginning of the year for any schools that wanted to talk to us about if they were struggling setting a balanced budget and wanted to talk to us. We did meet with 4 schools that wanted that help. So just come forward and talk to us, and we can we're trying to get a scheme together with Ming and with schools improvement officers, just to get a sort of a policy together that we can put a program together to help schools that need that additional help, because it's not always just a financial thing. There's other factors involved in the deficit. So yeah, we're putting that together, and we'll get that. That's what we're doing with the schools that have come forward to us at the moment.
More the schools having to be proactive, not the authority being proactive with the schools.
Well, we did contact the ones that we thought were concerned us most.
Yeah.
And then other schools came forward as well that we could see in a year or so's time that it was going to be they were going to be struggling to set a balanced budget. So yeah, we're here if you need us.
Thank you. Has anyone got any other comments or questions for Catherine? It's all very quiet today.
No.
Right, so the revenue monitoring report.
That's me again, isn't it? I'm so sorry. Okay, right. So this year we set the budget expecting a deficit, annual deficit of 8.2. We've already gone up to 10, and the movements are pretty much in the high needs block. 216 of that is the schools block, and that's the growth fund. So we're going onto that paper later with peers. We've just used more of the reserves that we've carried forward there. So that 216 overspend is in the reserves that we're bringing forward. High needs block increases, usual reasons why. So again, mainstream, says Karina mentioned earlier, the additional funding that we're providing to mainstream schools over and above the hours that they would normally have for an EHCP, that's caused an increase there. We've also got special out-of-borough schools. There's an increased number in there, and then increased costs associated with those as well. So that's moved the forecast. Independent mainstream schools, we've pulled that out. It used to be on the independent mainstream, independent non-maintained special schools line, but we've pulled out the mainstream schools in there, the independent mainstream schools. So we've just had that on a separate line. So that looks like there's been a 490k movement, but really it was part of the line below, but we've just separated it out to keep them separate from the special and non-maintained special schools. Early years block, no variance budget at this time, but we've just found out about the early years supplementary grant. So I'm sure Ian's and Kerry are really interested in that. So that is additional funding that's coming through. We've just found out that we're getting 44p for 3 to 4 year olds per hour, and £2, I would say 69 for 2-year-old funding, which is a massive increase. So the DfE are expecting us to passport that straight out to schools, pass that on 100%. So I think our thoughts are in line with what the DfE are expecting us to do, but we just need to rubber stamp it and get the internal governance through on that, and then we can pass that out to providers. But we're meeting with the early years task and finish group next week just to go through the ins and outs of that. So the hardship fund, as I said in the earlier paper, we've got 50,000 that we set aside, and no one's come forward to want any of that yet. So I think the early years team are still pushing for that and telling everyone about it in their newsletter. So it's there if any settings want to apply for that. Yeah, and then it's just the tables there, and again the growth that we'll talk about later. So is there any questions on monitoring this? Yeah.
No questions.
I sent everyone to sleep, I think.
I'm sure Ina's team will have plenty to discuss with you next week over the early years part. Just out of interest, you said that with the increase in the schools block reserve coming from the reserve fund, how the reserve fund looking now? Because you've had to dip into that a bit, haven't we?
Oh yeah, so okay, yeah. Let me show you that on the report. It's probably easier. So we brought forward to 384,000 that we brought forward, and then let me just check this is the right year. I'm looking at the right year. Yeah, sorry. So we brought through 384,000. So we'll have 168 left if everything happens as we think it's going to happen this year.
Thank you, Catherine.
Okay.
That's right. Okay, growth fund update. This Pierce, I believe.
Yeah. Piers, do you want me to share your report on the screen?
Please. It's easier if you have control over
I'm
it.
prepared. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. I suppose the starting point that I'd say about the growth fund is that particularly for 24-25, we're very much going to be driven by the level of international migration into the borough, because it's that's driving this requirement for additional places, or the bulk of the requirement for additional places at the moment. And of course, whilst we're still waiting for the May census, I think at some point we will expect this very high level of movement in since 2021 to abate, but we don't know when, and therefore we have to plan on the basis that it won't abate and that we will continue to see very high levels of movement into the borough. So with that caveat, we are expecting to have a spend by 24-25 of 1.6 million, and slightly less than the growth fund spend expected in 23-24 of 1.9 million. So these are both quite significant sums of money, clearly. Okay, so we can roll down a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are a number of things that are going on at the moment that are quite important to us in terms of potential impact on our this need for places. The Forest Schools consultation on conversion of the school to coeducational status potentially has quite a significant positive impact on that school, and indeed on the borough, the growth fund itself, because one of the reasons that we've had to the causes of the very high levels of spend is the necessity to provide additional places in coeducational schools to ensure that we had capacity for girls, and plainly, the Forest School as a single-sex boys' school has been unable to help with that task, and indeed it's led to the slightly absurd position where we're having to pay for additional capacity in a number of coeducational schools, while still having capacity in the Forest School. And because of the way, of course, the admissions system operates, the result of that is that we have boys who might otherwise have been placed at the Forest School being placed in coeducational school places through the normal action of parental preference in the admission system. Okay, so at the moment, the Wokingham secondary school roles are continuing to grow. And that certainly if we looked back to where we were at the beginning of 2022, based on our 2021 projections, we would have expected the year 7 admission numbers to start to tail off. So they'd have been higher than where we would have been in, say, 2020. But at the moment, but we would still have been falling off from this year 20 and onwards, working our way back down to the sort of 2019-20 levels. But that isn't the case at the moment. The projections are that the numbers will continue to increase. I don't know that will, I can't tell you that will definitely occur, because it's very much driven by factors that are outside anybody's ability to control or ability to estimate reliably. Okay. So I made the note about the bow hunt, just rushing through. Okay. So we have a kind of process ongoing at the moment to determine what the capacity will be, and that capacity will eventually drive the spend from the growth fund. At the moment, we are subject to what's called a GOLD process. These are short-term sort of task and finish group type processes, if you like, led by the council's chief executive personally, to focus on areas that are perceived as potentially problematic for the council in terms of its capital and revenue spend. And so at the moment, the GOLD process, as having determined what we will be doing or providing for 23-24, is now focusing on the provision for 24/25 and onwards. So that's a process that I support, but I'm not right in the heart of. So that's it's critical for us that the outcome of this is that we do have sufficient capacity. Okay, I've listed a number of normal things that are going on at the moment. The impact of new housing, probably worth mentioning at the moment. We are still in the process of determining what the next stage in the borough's provision of new housing would be. There are a number of options, but if we don't have a large-scale housing scheme agreed, then we would reasonably expect that some of the numbers of children in the borough, particularly primary admissions, will start to tail off. The one thing we do know about new housing is that it is certainly very important to us in terms of where many of the younger children live. It is certainly disproportionate to the number of homes involved. And then we have other issues like cross-border movement. At the moment, we export more children than we import, but they're to very different categories of school. For fairly obvious reasons, we don't, for example, have any grammar schools in Wokingham. So our secondary age pupils, those the parents who prefer a grammar school education of necessity, if they're successful, will go out of borough. But the consequence of that has been so far that that's tended to support our efforts in terms of making provision for pupils. Were those children be unable to get places outside of the borough, then we would have a further pressure placed on us, and that would place a further pressure on the growth fund, of course. Okay, I'm not sure there's much else that I wish to say on this. Yep, okay, yes, and also to say at the moment that we have, this is quite an important point for us, one of the things that we never used to have was very high rates of growth mid-phase in the secondary sector. Wokingham had lots of families with children, already with children moving into the borough, but they tended to be into the early years, into the Key Stage 1 age groups historically. Well, now we're seeing older children arriving, and for the first time last year we saw quite significant numbers of children moving into the secondary sector. And again, if that is maintained, then that becomes a very significant issue for us, because it's one thing agreeing the year 7 places, but we will need to agree additional places for year 8 and year 11. But it's completely unknown and unknowable at the moment if that will be the case. Okay, so the financial implications, if we roll down. It might be helpful to move on to the tabled spreadsheet. I think coming up down at the bottom here. Yeah, okay, so you can see that we have a number of pre-existing commitments where we have projects where we've already agreed. So, and this reflects the fact that our financial years and our academic years don't align. We've got some additional places that we agreed for 23-24, and then we've got the new capacity that we're working on for 24-25. There are some live projects at the moment which may result in the 90 places where it just says additional places. Some of that is for live projects where we haven't quite fully bottomed out what those figures will be, but they are it's unlikely to be left as a significant reserve by the end of this process. And then we've got the secondary. I've just looked down quick, scurry down into the primary sector. So we still have, despite the fact that we've got significant numbers of surplus places in Key Stage 1, and we're working with schools to look at across the borough as and when we're requested to reduce admission numbers. we still have this ongoing problem with Key Stage 2, and the consequence of this very high rate of arrival in the borough is that where we would reasonably have expected that by this point that Year 6 would have been essentially we wouldn't have a problem in Years 5 and Year 6. Actually, the numbers of children that are arriving in the boroughs means that we are getting place supply challenges for Year 6, and that generates a requirement for the borough to make supportive payments to those schools involved. And again, who knows if that will continue, but while it is the case, then it certainly seems that we are likely to have continuing supply problems in Year 6. And because those are classes that we have to create at that point, at necessity, they become classes that we will have to provide financial support to. So you can see at the moment, we've got these figures. If we can work down to the bottom line, that might be the easiest way to see it. Okay, so we as you can see at the moment, there is a most of the reserves that we would expect to, or the unspent budget from each year, we're expecting to be spending in the next year. It very much depends then on what the level of demand is, and that's outside of our control or certain knowledge as to exactly what the spend will be in 24-25. Okay, questions?
Thanks, Pete. We've got a few questions here. Chris?
Thank you for that, Piers. On the table, I can see where it says pre-existing secondary commitments, you've got the schools and the number. How does that move through? I don't quite understand. It's possibly me just being thick, actually, but I don't quite understand how it moves through on those other paragraphs. So you've got secondary sector places 23, then 24. I'm looking, obviously, one I actually know about, which is Bournemouth. So are they 15 additional children? Because then I can see 23, 24, and then I can see 24, 25. I mean, we haven't agreed to any of these numbers. How does all they pay through? Is it just me being thick, or?
No, do you want me to answer, Piers? Because
that would be great, yeah.
So you'd agreed to the 15 for 22-23. So this top table is just saying this is the 5/12 of funding from April to August to cover the ones that you agreed last year to finish off the academic year. And then I believe you've agreed for 15 for September 23.
We have.
So this is the 7/12 of that funding. And then the following year, you get the 5/12 again, so it's academic year. So we've just split it over the financial years. Does that make sense? So it's just two lots of 15 that you've agreed for last September and this September. And that's just how it's worked out.
So the 24-25.
Yeah.
What's that?
That's the 5/12 that relate to the last term of the 23-24 academic year. But because it falls into next financial year, we've just got it in there for next financial year.
All right. So we don't receive. Yeah, that's like. Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, no, I do get it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I told you it was me being thick, didn't I?
No.
Ooh.
Chris,
It's early.
Ming, welcome.
Oh, you're on mute.
Apology. Yeah. Thank Brian. Possibly the point I want to make is related to what the question Chris just asked. That the interdependency of what happened on the ground. Pia just said that I think because some fluid factor that affects the school placement need. At the same time, we have some live inquiry, live measure or project being developed or in development to address the placement need. So it's very important that growth fund need to link to what's happening on the ground. So sometimes can be confusing. I think I would like to question where the figure come from. So I think it's really, really important that we will make sure the school Holland fully understand, fully brief what happened on the ground in terms of change to the school placement need and the measure being developed or being developed by the school partner. Actually, yesterday there was a good head teachers, let's secondary head teachers partnership meeting, put together the idea they share between themselves about addressing the school placement need, and possibly that will impact on our growth funding, how we are going to let this foreign know what happened on the ground. So that's something we'll do more in an even better way in the future.
Thank you, Min. Any other questions for Piers? No. Piers, I'm presuming, because there was no places apparently in years 7, 8, 9 and 10 pretty much across the board, that you're working with the Secondary Federation around future needs?
That there is an ongoing process of engagement, yes, which
Yep.
Ming is leading at the moment. And indeed, there was a meeting yesterday as part of that process to talk to schools about what future capacity needs will be.
Lovely. I think just being reassured is quite nice to know that there are still things in place there. Thank you. Yes. Right, the DSG management plan and safety valve. I'm looking at Jonathan and Ming. I'm assuming we'll be leading on this one.
Yeah, Jonathan, I believe Jonathan let Jonathan to lead on this. Jonathan.
Morning, Jonathan.
Hi everyone. There was a supplementary report that was sent round, which was really a progress update. The main highlights from that are to mention that we have an open consultation with schools at the moment, really going through a level of detail around our deficit management plan, checking school priorities. We've had a lot of dialogue with schools, obviously, over recent months, and we believe we understand what school priorities are. We believe our programme of activity, suggested programme of activity, addresses those priorities, and we're just using this opportunity to absolutely ensure that's the case, that we're not missing anything, there are no priorities that won't be addressed by our current plan of action. So this consultation will conclude on the 28th of July. We'll then use the summer to sort of update and refresh our proposals and our plans, and then we'll come back to schools with that sort of final set of proposals in September in a stage 2 consultation. That'll be done in conjunction with the other consultations on school budgeting matters, and that will be then presented to this next meeting of the schools forum on the I think it's on the 12th of October. At that stage, we are likely to, the proposals will require a transfer of a 1% schools block to the high needs block, so we'll be seeking school views on that in September. We're not seeking the schools at the moment. We're looking at the proposals themselves, but we expect to be coming back to schools, and then that will be presented to schools forum in October for a recommendation. Clearly, that's a higher amount than has previously been requested. But what this report sets out is the kind of broadly the overview, the sort of financial overview of the deficit management plan, and hopefully illustrates that money is not intended to go into the deficit. That money is purely for investment in service improvement and additional services that we believe schools recognise they have been identifying as requiring. There is a deficit, as people are well aware. That will be covered by the safety valve contribution and a significant contribution from the council tax levy, which has been introduced. So really sort of paint this, at this stage, we're painting that overall picture, that sort of broad financial overview, describing the proposals to address the system-wide pressures, and we believe that'll get us to a position of a balanced budget over the 6 years of the programme. So added to that, a proposal we're asking for permission on here is that we've had a number of high schools, in fact, have identified that transfer of high schools block will present a particular pressure for smaller schools. And it's been suggested to us, recommended to us, that we explore the option to mitigate that for smaller schools by introducing a different way of modelling the schools block contribution and doing that according to school phase, because it's been high schools that suggested that might be more acceptable or palatable, or according to school size. But we're exploring that at the moment with the DfE. It's quite a technical question, and we're really seeking the view from Schools Forum today as to whether you want us to proceed with that exploration. I think that won't be a simple thing to do. But if schools are of the view that it may be beneficial or maybe more palatable, then I think we would pursue it. And it's likely to require some legal advice and some rather technical approaches, but we would want to know at this stage whether Schools Forum are in support of that, because if not, then perhaps it will be quite labour intensive to achieve a model that would do that.
Are you looking for a vote on that, Jonathan?
On that particular aspect, yes, at this stage. Whether that's something that schools would wish to see as an option, I mean, we'll only be presenting it as an option in the autumn, but really at this stage, whether it's an option that schools want us to pursue.
Maybe you might be able to clarify this. If you win a consultation, and historically schools have not supported the 0.5% from schools block. If schools say they're not supporting the 1%, shouldn't we go through that process first before we come to School Forum about getting a vote on this other option? Because you might get a vote saying, yes, you can have a different type of option, but the schools are saying no, but we can then going to turn around and say, well, we're going to apply for it anyway.
Do you mind if I come back on that, Brian? I think whether this option is a possibility will have a bearing on certainly whether smaller schools are inclined to support the proposal, I suspect. So we thought we needed to know by the time we're asking for that view in the autumn, whether we actually know whether that's going to be technically achievable or not. That's why we're doing it this way around.
Okay, now, Karina, you had your hand up first there.
Thanks, Jonathan. I just want to say I totally support the safety valve programme and appreciate everything that's being done. And with regards to the transfer of the money, and you said it's going to be for future investment, I think schools will want to know a bit more specifically what that investment's going to look like. So I know we're aware that there are a lot of applications for EHCPs because people aren't coping at school level with K-coded children. And I think if we were to know what your offer might look like for schools to be supporting those co-coded children specifically, like will we get more speech and language support or EP, I think that might help in schools being able to make that decision. And I do also think that I would want you to consider, and I know Brian wants to talk about this later, but just the option about having slightly different percentage cuts. I mean, as a small school, I've just had to cut staff hours across the board because my budget is dire. And I think that's something that schools would also take into consideration if they understood the whole essence of what you're asking for. So
yeah, I agree. Correct. And sorry, just to add to that, Jonathan, when you spoke about this in the pre-meet as well, Karina, it was about that plan of what action would be, but also the we need some form of impact statement about what has been done previously, so schools can understand money's been used before, what's been the impact of that, and what you're hoping for the impact of the proposals that you're doing.
I would say in the Schools Forum report, I haven't gone into great detail but actually in the consultation papers there is a level of not huge detail, but there is an accompanying document that sets out quite a high level. I appreciate most people won't want to get into that detail, but that detail is available through the consultation hub, so you can find that there if you wish to know. I would say in terms of comparing what we're doing now to previous investment, we are really genuinely investing here in some very new initiatives that haven't been done before previously, particularly at that K-coded level of support. And I think that's where, I mean, we recognise that's where the gap has been, I think, historically, and that's what we're seeking to address. That will include a new outreach offer for speech and language. What we can't do at this stage is create more speech and language therapists. There's a national shortage, and even EPs, there's a national shortage. What we're seeking to do is ensure that there are lower levels of support and that we're drawing on the expertise and skills within the area to ensure that's more readily available to schools at an earlier opportunity, rather than waiting in the queue for what can be a very long wait for some of those specialist staff. So that will include increase the SEMH outreach offer, increase a new speech and language outreach offer, additional resource around autism support in mainstream schools for cognitively able pupils with autism. We're really conscious of the gaps in support now, and we are absolutely targeting that resource to ensure we address some of those needs going forward. And some of that new provision will begin to be visible from September. So we are moving at pace. It will ramp up over the coming academic year. It will certainly be ramping up, and this investment will certainly gives us confidence to know what we can invest in, that we can move forward and ramp that support up as schools are saying they require.
Thanks, Jonathan. I think a lot of us are privy to some of them, but I think that some of those schools who don't always access the various groups, you may need to be trying to get proactive with so they understand what's out there to get everyone on board. Yeah.
I've been actively going and talking out to as many head teacher groups as I possibly can, and very welcome. If there's any groups that feel they're not conscious of what we're doing or aware of the plans, please let me know and I will get out and speak to them.
I know you've been very proactive. Thank you. Sarah.
Sorry. Yes, I was just going to say about the SEND consultation. The document is it's got a lot of detail on the priorities and also the priorities for investment. Head teachers was sent an email about going onto the Engage platform, which I signed up to, but it didn't take me to the consultation. So if schools, mainstream schools, are going to understand more about the investment and what we're doing, then this consultation is key, isn't it? And I'm just wondering about access to that consultation and what other heads here have they been able to access it easily. I signed up to the Engage platform. It may be something I'm doing wrong, but it then didn't take me to the consultation. I'm assuming I've then got to go into the hub, have I, and go to the consultation?
We are somewhat unfortunately saddled with being the first consultation done through the Engage hub. So it's unfortunately having to get people through the technical hurdle of registering on that platform. I expected it would then take you automatically to the consultation, so I'll have to go back to our colleagues in the comms
The
team.
registration is easy, Jonathan. The registration was a click of a button, but it doesn't take you anywhere. It just registers you. That was my experience, and I think it's absolutely key, because what Brian is saying is that the mainstream schools need to understand more, and in that consultation there's loads of information to enable them to understand more.
Thanks for the feedback, Sarah. I'll go back to our colleagues in comms and make sure another message. I mean, we're sending out reminders over, it's been open for over a week now, so we'll be proactive and send out a reminder, including a link to the actual consultation page. Apologies if it's thanks for the feedback. I was hoping it was rather slicker perhaps than it is, but
no, because if I've not gone onto it, not many people, other people will have done.
I appreciate it.
No, you're right.
Okay.
Prue.
Oh, sorry, did you want to take Ming first? I think he had his hand up before me.
Ming.
Thank you, Brian. I don't know if the order simply. Yeah, I just want to emphasize. I think Corina raised a really valid point. That throughout this process, we recognize that as well. In terms of what should be spent on, it shouldn't be just something local authority think would be the best for school. That's why Jonathan talked to many head teachers and through workshop, and we identified few priority that school think will benefit, particularly mainstream school. I have to say that mainstream school best, and then also in turn that will make sure that impact positively on children, young people. You refer to the report that's being summarized in section 4.2, school priority. Those are not school priority. Local authority identified. That's through this workshop, through conversation with the head teacher. Those are the priority we identified. Going forward, if this transfer is successful, it will be done, it's supported by school, we who want to invest money in those areas identified by the school. That's what I'm beginning. When I talk to the manager, to our colleague here, that it's very, very important. Those priorities need to be identified by school because they are on the ground, they know best. So that already been done, but if you feel like something more need to be refined, look at the report section 4.2, summarize what the school have told us. So that's I just would like to highlight that. That's where the importance comes from school.
Smith. Prue.
Thank you, Brian. I suppose what we wanted to start talking about this is that is to commend Jonathan and Ming for the engagement they've tried to have with schools, and I know that they are keen to engage with as many schools as possible. So if you'd like to speak to them, do. The issue for me is that I can see that in the past when we've done the 0.5 transfer, which has normally failed, schools haven't supported it. We didn't explain what we wanted it for. This time, it's actually absolutely crucial to what we need to achieve, because, and it's ironic really, the smallest schools, who are the ones who find it most difficult to agree to the transfer because of spreading their overheads and so on, are the ones who most need the help from the centre, because they can't do it by themselves because they have so few resources. So this is about helping everybody to get on top of the SEND stuff, so that you're not struggling in the way you are at the moment. And we've had all the budgetary stuff just gone through earlier on this morning. You can see that the overspend in the high needs block is already escalating ahead of where we had predicted it would go to. It looks better than it did because we had an injection of cash as part of the safety valve programme. If we can't get you to agree that the system-wide approach is the approach we need to take, where we all chip in and work together, so we can sort of help you and you can help the overspend back, as it were, we are all going to fail together, because the DFE will not give us any more cash towards paying off our deficit, because we won't succeed in the safety valve programme. So all the SEND improvements that are riding on this will not be able to be made, because the whole thing will fall apart. I am really quite not anxious, that would be the wrong word. I believe in you guys that you will do the right thing, because you want to do the right thing for your students and whatever, but I recognise that there's an issue of trust and there's an issue of resources, and it is going to be hard for some schools to agree to this because you are already under pressure in your own budgets. I fear the pressure will be worse if you don't agree to this on the whole system, and we will not do well by our SEND children and we'll all fall apart. So if you know of other schools, small school heads and things who need to talk to us about this, we were really, really keen to engage with you to find out how we can help you more, how we can ensure that you get value for the money that you'd be transferring into that high needs block, so that we can all be helped. I understand the issue of trust that you've got because of it hasn't gone well in the past. This is a reset, a complete reset. It's a whole system reset. So please do engage, and we really are trying to listen. That's why we've got this proposal on the table, which I think Jonathan's indicated he would like the schools forum to tell us whether you support or not, trying to do a differentiated 1% effectively, so the figure will be the same, but we try and spread it over schools in the fairest way, or the schools think is the fairest way. It's very technically difficult, so before we proceed with using a lot of time and effort to try and work out whether we can do it, we do need an indication from you that that's what you'd like us to do, and that's why Jonathan asked for that. I hope that all makes sense, and I hope I don't sound too anxious, but I am. It is deeply worrying. We can't go on like this, because the overspend will just spiral and somebody will be held accountable for it at the end. And if it's us as an education system, we will really be in trouble at that point.
Thank you, Prue. Darren.
Thanks, Brian. Just a quick question. So half the budget is secondary and half of it is primary, near as mustard. What's the definition of small school, so that we can get some idea of that sort of how much of that half wouldn't be allocated or wouldn't lose the 1%?
Darren, shall I come in? I don't think it's possible to say at this stage. I think our thinking is it would be a more differentiated approach, so linked to numbers on roll. That would be my sense of the fairest way to do it. But technically speaking, this is the system doesn't currently make provision for that, and we will have to ask for a disapplication in order to do something like this. So we have to come up with our own methodology. My colleagues in finance are sort of probably looking rather askance at me, because it's not an easy thing we're asking of them. But my sense is there wouldn't be a kind of cut-off point. I think the primary secondary split doesn't make sense, because obviously we've got some larger primaries. I think it's all about size and numbers on roll is my sense of how we'd wish to proceed with that.
Okay, thank you. Catherine, happy to help with that. Please be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Yeah, took my question away. Liz.
It's just a question about, sort of, I suppose, to Catherine, really, about the support for schools. As our budget is 85% on salaries, and we have we don't know about whether the teachers' pay rises will be funded. What happens if we commit to the 1% and in theory, and then the pay rise is then forced through, and then it isn't funded, and then schools go into deficit? Again, it's like one deficit pot against another pot. What support would be available for schools if it's not funded?
That's a very good question. Yeah, it's that it kind of comes back to the balances that we hold for schools. They've been increasing overall, and if we did have that clawback mechanism, that could like possibly help. So yeah, it's literally just a financial help that you'd need, because we give out all of the funding that we can from the schools book, goes all out to you guys, and we don't have any contingency or anything left behind to allocate out. So we're kind of stuck really between a rock and a hard place there. So yeah, there's no easy answer, I'm afraid. Just got to hope that the government fund the increase, any increase.
I think Ming wants to give you an answer.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Prue. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, yeah, I just talked to myself. Yeah. Again, Liz, it wouldn't be a straight answer. Now we already started to pay more attention to school may be at risk of running in deficit, or school already in deficit. In terms of supporting school, not necessarily all in monetary term. It's the same as the safeguarding safety vault. Let's transfer. We talk about investing money in priority school, identify the kind of investment back to school. So again, you have a scenario list you just raised. Again, the service area sense work together will support a particular school in terms of any support services, probably because of that you are lacking or whatever. We can put in more support, and not necessarily all in monetary form, but less support, I think, is a resource. That's something that we already are working on to support schools who may encountering financial difficulty, for one, not necessarily safety reason, for other reasons as well. So they're linked to other science support, school improvement, etc., and school partnership, how we can support each other. That's something in development.
Thank you, Ming.
Thank you.
Yes, we all know it's a contentious issue. We know in the past, historically, it's not always being favourable by schools. And I think you had faced similar challenges, if I'm honest. If you've already got 5 schools deficit, you want number 7 of just mainstream who this could put over the brink, let alone academies. So, yeah, Jonathan, I know you're doing your best to communicate as best as you can to the school community. I guess we'll just have to see where we go with the consultation, how well it's worded. I think what the impact will be will help with a lot of schools, I think, swaying to buying them into getting that 1%. We want to vote now on that option. Do you want to sort of clarify what that option is for everyone again, Jonathan? Because we have sort of talked about a couple of things there, so everyone's very clear about what they're voting for.
Yeah, we wish to proceed with seeking and developing a model that would enable us to apportion the 1% proposed schools block transfer, to apportion it according to school size. That would require a disapplication request, I think, in its own right. We'd have to work out our own methodology for doing so. That will take significant, it will take a fair bit of staff resource and staff time. So we want to know whether that proposal is something you want us to spend the time doing between now and the autumn, when we'll come back with the options.
Okay, Jonathan. Right, so if we go through the list that's got in front of me, people just say yes, they agree, or no, they don't. So just up, Andy. Come back to Andy.
Brian, perhaps if you make it more clear that you are actually opening a formal vote now for the forum. Maybe they didn't hear.
So we're opening up the formal vote now for that proposal, for that option that Jonathan has just outlined. So looking at a differentiated approach to the fund to take that 1%. So you're voting over yes or no for that. So Andy, what's your call?
Yes, approved.
Yes, thank you, Andy. Chris?
Oh, sorry. Brian, yeah, yes. Sorry, approved.
Thanks, Chris. Carol?
Yes.
Thanks, Carol. Karina?
Yes, please.
Deborah, are you able to?
Yes, approved.
Darren?
Yeah, happy to look at the options with confirmation by forum at a later date.
Thank you, Darren. Emma? Oh, no, you can't vote, can you? Hayley?
No, Haley's not voting either.
Right,
So the next one on the list is Ian Thomas.
Yeah, Ian Thomas?
Yes, yeah, happy to.
Ian Morgan?
Yes.
Thank you. Ian Piddock?
Yes.
James, I don't think you can vote either. Another Jonathan. Catherine, no. Kerry? Not with us at the moment. Liz?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And it's a yes from me as well. So that's unanimously gone through for you there, John.
Brian, do you want my vote?
Yes, yes, from me, Sarah Atra.
Oh, sorry, Sarah. Great, thanks, Sarah. If I missed anything else?
Shirley?
Sorry, Shirley, we into my...
Yes, yes. I think like Darren, I'd want to see it discussed at further forums, but yes, in principle.
Lovely, thank you. Have I missed anyone else? No, thank you. Okay, thanks, John.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you wanted to share from your report, or is that everything you got there?
No, that was the key thing. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Right, next is the DSG budget planning. We're back with you, Catherine.
Yeah, me again. Sorry. Just a little quick paper just to say what we're planning on doing for looking at next year's budgets. So we've got our task and finish groups that have worked really well. So we're still expecting, normally the last day of term, the DfE decide to give us what our funding rates are going to be for the following year. So we'll work on those over the summer. So we're proposing to meet with the task and finish group for the schools block as soon as we come back in the autumn term, after we've had a look through all the guidance and if anything major's changed, because the national funding formula is still to be coming in, but it still won't affect majorly the 24-25, we think. So we just wait for the guidance all to come through, and we'll digest that over the summer. And looks like we'll be looking at how to do something different with 1% as well. So that's something else for the group to look at too. Early years block, we're meeting next week just to talk about the new grant that's come in, but we don't find out the rates for the following year until December, just before Christmas. But we probably will meet in the autumn term just to go through what we're looking to do for the following year with all the new different funding that's coming in for 9 months and extra funding for 2-year-olds and things. So lots going on in the early years side of things. And the high needs block group, we'd like to meet in the autumn term as well to see what's going through with the safety valve, the programme, and how we'll carry forward with that. And I've just got a diagram there just showing roughly when everything's going to happen and how it'll all sort of fall into place. So that's it basically.
Lovely, thank you, Catherine. No one got any questions here for Catherine? No, thank you. Right, the budget consultation arrangement, we discussed that already with Jonathan, so that's great. Just a quick update with the Borough Education Partnership. Ming, you can add in anything pieces here if you wish. Mostly the group has been looking at the SEND with the safety valve. I'm doing a lot of work with Jonathan there and updating there on how we support there. We looked quite closely for a while there around the school improvement offer from the authority, which now they've changed it to a school strategic partnership. So they identify that actually there needs to be a school-led system when it comes to school improvement. So a lot of discussion, a lot of work has been around that sort of work. We get regular updates from Zoe on school places and the secondary or the whole strategic placement area there. There's been a lot more joint up thinking, a lot more joint up partnership work within the authority through this education board, which has been really positive. And now we will also be looking at the early years multi-agency partnership as well. Okay, so they're the main things. Is there anything else you want to add there, Ming, about what the partnership's been covering? You're on mute, Ming.
I thought I keep doing that. Yeah, I was told you should mute when I was meeting. Yeah, you covered it really well, Brian, in a very succinct way. I just would like to highlight early years now bring into the partnership. is really important. Phase out intervention is multi-agency, multi-disciplinary. So the intervention earlier, if we got earlier right, we will reduce the need at later stage, and also choosing young people who have better life opportunity in the future. So let probably some area, probably school forum, will bring more developments that keep you abreast of what development is on the ground. I just want to highlight early years partnership that's in development.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Yeah, we just got the first taste of it last week. So yes. Right, so that moves on to forward planning. For the next meeting on the 11th of October, we've got the revenue monitoring report, GST management plan and the safety valve update, GST budget update. We also will be needing to have nominations for chair and vice chair. And I think we also need to formalise the task finish groups that we've got with the memberships there.
Chair, possibly can't see people have hand up. I think Ian Morgan have hand up.
Sorry, Ian.
Yeah, it was just to say to Ming, do you have any representation from PVIs on this partnership?
You're on mute, Ming.
You were doing that. Yeah, we have that in mind. The partnership we at the moment in the development early stage, we want to base on Best Start program, and then yes, you will be included. At the moment, that group is a multi-agency group. Initially, we were talking about to set up a new board, include you, but there was a view from Education Partnership Board. Let's base on something to start with, and then we get evolved into a partnership board. We don't have a partnership board yet, to answer your question, but you will be included. I can assure you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right, sorry, there's no other questions. Lovely. Right, so again, this is the forward planning. We've got the revenue monitoring, mentioned planning for GST, and the safety valve update, GST budget update. Is there anything else that we're aware of that needs to be included for the following meeting? Okay. Just for any other business, Sina and I were discussing this earlier. Looking at the membership of the school forum, there is going to be some movement because myself and Corinne, for example, we're both down as maintainer heads, and where both schools are academies. So we need to be looking at the membership that we've currently got. So there will be some vacancies there that we need to be looking at. The senior, you can jump in at any point if you wish. Also, we're very concerned. Paul was the sole governor or local advisory board member on school forum. With him now resigning, we don't have anyone outside of that. So I think it would be good if the heads on here, if they could sort of proactively move out to whether it's Secondary Foundation or WPHA, actually get their heads to, if they can identify anyone within their current governing structures or their labs who would be of benefit and helpful for the school forum, if they could talk to us about it, and then hopefully we can get someone with their expertise to join us on the school forum, because there is a significant gap that we have in our membership currently.
Yeah, I agree with Brian saying, as he mentioned, we had a conversation about it. There is a lack of representation from governors, and that's very much something that the guidance promotes, that we should have some involvement of parents. And I have found from experience that just announcing that there is a vacancy in the newsletter doesn't actually generate an interest. So as Brian said, if the head teachers know of certain governors that they think have an interest in finances, perhaps a financial background or knowledge through their work careers that may be suited to join the board, do talk to them. We do currently have 4 vacancies. There will be a membership review coming up at the next meeting, but in the meantime, if you start identifying and start thinking about who could join, and as Brian said, we will have the election of chairman and vice chairman, so you may want to start to think amongst yourselves who would like to take that position, and that election will happen at the next meeting.
Lovely, thank you, Sarah. yeah, if anyone wants to discuss that further in the membership, please contact one of us and we're quite happy to share with it. We're meeting over August to look at a proposal to take forward on School Forum in that October meeting. Is there any other business? No hands. Thank you very much. Well, we managed to get through it just over an hour. Thank you, Jonathan. I think you managed to offshoot any major debates today. So well done on your presentation of the information there, because that's normally what we get. So thank you. Thank you all for joining. I hope you all have a lovely summer when we finally get there. And thank you for all your work and contributions over the year. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for your support, colleague.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Brian.